Fighters. They're the tough guys in this game, called Lamentations of the Flame Princess. What's up, guys? So today I'm going to take a look at the fighter class in Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Fighters are what I'll say the vanilla ice cream of classes in any fantasy role-playing game. They're the basic, easy go-to starter. In fact, even as an experienced person, I recommend people who are first dipping their toes into any role-playing game to pick a very basic and easy-to-play class. And a fighter is just that. Does that mean that fighters are boring? No. Fighters can be awesome. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, Bill, what about paladins? Well, Bill, what about rangers? Well, Bill, what about monks and martial artists? They're all lumped in. Just make a fighter and then come up with your own flavor or description or skin for it. Now, will your fighter be able to cast divine magic like a paladin? No. Will your fighter be able to do spells like a ranger? No. Will your fighter have chi and have like crazy martial arts powers like a monk? No. Just make a fighter and stop complaining. Fucking babies. Slaughter defines man's history. Every new era is defined by the cruelty man inflicts upon man or the victory against it. To those in power, soldiers are but tools to shape the populace to their whims. The price that is paid to enact these desires is irrelevant to those giving the orders. In battle there is no law. Man maims man. Horribly wounded men scream for mercy as their life's blood pours out from cruelly hacked wounds. Their cries are ignored and their lives extinguished by those too cruel or frightened to listen. Poets and politicians speak of the honor of battle for a just cause. But in battle there is no justice. There is just death from metal implements that crush, slash, and stab. To be willing to slaughter at another's command in the name of peace and nobility, to be hardened to the deaths of loved companions, to be immersed in this worthlessness of life, that is the life of a soldier. Fighters are these soldiers that have seen the cruelty of battle, have committed atrocities, and in any just universe will damn them to hell, and have survived. Fighters begin with the best combat capabilities in the game and are the only class to further improve in combat skill as levels are gained. Fighters are going to have the most hit points in this game. Fighters will have the benefits of increasing attack bonuses in this game. Fighters are 1 page long. So really, what does it mean to be a fighter? How does this game work mechanically for a fighter? Aha! Here we go. To truly understand the value of a fighter, we have to skip ahead in this game book to page 55 where they talk about encounters. And they have a cute little illustration of two people about to have a duel. And what I like about this illustration is that as you turn the pages through the duel, you see the duel progress, and it gets pretty bloody and gory and brutal. Just like real life. Encounters are any situation where the player characters meet other characters or creatures in uncertain circumstances. There's no limit in the options available for an encounter. Attack, parlay, run, sneak around, all and more are possible actions and outcomes. So they go through the system of combat, which is super basic because that's what this game is influenced by. You start off with the surprise round, determining whether either side of the party is surprised. Then you look at the encounter distance, if you don't know that already. Then you look at reactions, and then you go into combat, which covers initiative, attack, casting a spell. Things to do in one round. Attack, casting a spell, change weapons and attack, holding an action, moving, parrying, using an item. Other combat issues, aiming, attacking from behind, cover, firing into melee. Helpless opponents, holy water, invisibility and darkness, morale, mounted combat, oil and fire, pursuit, unarmed combat, wrestling. There we go. All right. So let's just look at the basics because today we're talking about fighters. Let's see how fighters attack and how they work. I mean, before I choose a class for this character, I kind of need to know that, don't you? A character can attack if there is an enemy within striking range. The referee will inform the player what the opponent's AC is, and the player rolls a d20 to determine if his character hits. If the result is equal to or greater than the defender's AC, including all modifiers, then the character inflicts the weapon's damage upon the opponent. Strength modifiers are added to the attack bonus in melee. Okay, so my guy has a 14 strength, which means he gets a little bump. And as a fighter, he'll get a little bump. Dexterity modifiers are added to the attack bonus in ranged combat and to the armor class. Okay, so that 14 dex that I have, that's a good thing too. So my guy could be a pretty good fighter. I mean, good with melee combat, good with ranged combat, you know. I could skin him as an archer. I could make him into kind of a rangery guy who uses, you know, a short sword and he's got a bow, and I mean, some good flexibility in there, right? Fighters, dwarves, and elves have 2 extra options when attacking in melee. They are press or defensive fighting. So press, this is a fierce attack made at the expense of defense. It gives you an additional +2 to hit, but it's a -4 AC penalty. Defensive fighting, this is a more conservative attack, emphasizing defense more than offense. +2 to your AC bonus, -4 to hit. I kind of like that. You don't need a million maneuvers. I mean, basically it's, are you being extra offensive or are you being extra defensive, or are you just straight up going with your rolls? Change weapons and attack. If a character is not holding the weapon that he wants to use, he can drop what's in his hands and draw a weapon, assuming the weapon is in an accessible place, such as a belt scabbard. There's a -2 penalty to hit during the round that this happens. Okay, fair enough. I like that. Basic mechanic. Hold action. Sometimes winning the initiative over a foe is not all that advantageous because it's important to know what the opponent's going to do before deciding for oneself. Any action can be held until the end of the round, and at the time the action is taken, it happens simultaneously, not before other actions are taken. For instance, if waiting for an enemy to close later in the round before attacking, when that enemy closes, both attacks happen simultaneously. The one holding his action does not act first. I get that too. Move. A character can move up to 1/3 of his normal movement rate in feet every round, and can also attack during this round if there is an enemy within that distance. Alternately, a character can charge, moving his full rate and doing double damage, but suffering a -2 AC penalty for that round. Characters with weapons that can receive a charge automatically strike first against an enemy closing into melee range, unless they've already acted that round, and do double damage against the charging enemies. All right, these are important rules to know as a player who is playing a fighter, but also very much as a DM. I could see those moves and those kind of attacks and the impact of that coming into handy. Parry. Characters can decide to defend themselves in combat at the expense of all other possible activity. No other action is allowed during a round in which a character parries, although the player is free to decide that his character is parrying at any point during the round, even out of initiative sequence, provided the character has not yet acted. This gives a +2 AC bonus for the round, or a +4 for fighters, dwarves, and elves. That's really cool. I guess the closest thing to that would be if you were in like 5th edition D&D and you chose to just defensively fight for that round and not make any attacks, and it gives your opponents disadvantage. But in this game system, there is no advantage or disadvantage, so getting that bump of +4 to your AC for parrying is pretty cool. I can envision that in a situation where a fighter is being swarmed and outnumbered, and he needs to like hold the line so that the magic users and the squishy people in the back can do whatever they're doing. And that +4 bonus to AC would be pretty huge. All right, other combat issues. Aiming. If using a missile weapon, a character can decide to take a full round to aim. This means taking absolutely no action for an entire round except aiming, during which time the aiming character has no dexterity modifiers as AC. On the following round, the aiming character receives a +4 to hit when firing. The aiming time is in addition to normal reload times. That's pretty dope, because if you have a strategically inclined party, you could have a tank up front holding down the line and stopping people from getting past, parrying, right? And then you have another dude in the back, maybe an elf or another fighter or whatever, who is readying and aiming to get that huge bump to their attack +4 to hit when they fire the next round with their bow. So that's kind of brings up the old feel of strategy. You know, there was a time when D&D really required strategy. Because, as I've mentioned many times before, in the early days, it was played mostly by wargamers who were all about strategy. So this brings some of that element back. It gets my juices flowing. I mean, I don't mean that to be gross. I mean creative juices. Attacking from behind. If a character is attacked from behind by an enemy he's not aware of, he loses all dexterity and shield modifiers, and the enemy receives a further +2 bonus to hit. So there's your classic backstab move. Nowadays it's called the sneak attack, and you can get it, you know, by flanking sometimes. But in the old days, it was backstab, and that's what thieves did, and they got extra damage to do it. But I think tactically it makes sense for any class in melee combat. If you stab somebody and they aren't aware that you are there and you're attacking them from behind, they shouldn't get a dex bonus, and they shouldn't get the ability to have their AC modified by their shield because you're attacking them from behind. So that makes sense. Hardcore. Cover. Cover is protection behind something that can actually block incoming attacks, such as a wall or arrow slit. Cover bonuses are as follows. They break it up into 25, 50, 75, and 90% coverage. So if you take cover, your AC bonus jumps significantly. Even 25%, right? So if you're just, you know, 25% cover gives you a +2. 50% coverage gives you a +4 to AC. 75% coverage gives you a +7 to AC. 90% coverage gets you a +10. So imagine that scenario where I said your fighter tank is holding down the enemies, parrying defensively, and your other fighter or elf or whatever has their bow, and they've taken cover and they're aiming. They have a +4 to AC by taking cover, 50% cover, which kind of helps them out because when they're aiming, they don't get their dex bonus. So a smart person takes cover and aims and shoots, or at least takes cover and shoots, because that 50% coverage is a huge bump to your AC, which again is real. That's why, like, even now in modern times, like, soldiers take cover. Wherever there's cover available, you take cover because bullets are flying past you and you don't want to get shot. You know, in movies when the guys just come out with their guns and that's like unrealistic Hollywood bullshit. So, I mean, to me that's basic. And probably to many of you watching this video, taking cover is like a basic combat move, right? If you can, if cover is available. And certainly if you're playing your games with minis and terrain, and the game master, DM, referee, whatever, has that shit laid out, take advantage of it. Don't be stupid. Like, don't just leave yourself open. Firing into melee. Firing into melee with a missile weapon is a very uncertain thing. If doing so, randomly determining who in the melee is actually targeted, the firing character does not get to choose before rolling to hit. If the firing character takes a full round to aim, one possible target of the firing character's choice counts as 2 people in the melee when the referee comes to determine the targets. For example, if a character fires into a combat where 2 of his allies are fighting a lone enemy, normally there would be an equal chance of targeting each of the 3 combatants. After aiming, the enemy would count as 2 figures, giving a 50% chance that the enemy would be the one targeted. Significantly larger creatures or monsters in a melee count as 2 characters for a random targeting purpose, and truly gargantuans can be fired upon using the normal rules. Dex modifiers do not apply for either the firing character or the targets when resolving missile fire into melee. That kind of fucks up my great plan that I was just illustrating. Although, not really, because if the parrying person is holding off 3 combatants, then there's a 1 in 4 chance that they would be randomly hit by firing into melee. But if you take the aim round, it's much less likely. Although, you know, think about your own experiences. How many times have you had a situation where a spell or an arrow was fired and somebody botched the roll and it hit their ally? You know, sometimes it's kind of funny. Unarmed combat. This is the last part for fighters that I wanted to specifically read. Because remember a while back when I was like, if you want to make a monk, just make a fighter. Well, here's an opportunity to do that. Suppose that you have an idea for a fighter who's not going to be armored up necessarily and wielding weapons or firing bows. You just want to make somebody who's, a pugilist, a wrestler, whatever. Fists are treated as minor weapons, doing 1d2 hit points of damage. A character may attempt to wrestle another character to either immobilize or take something out of that character's hands. The attacker must have both hands free. The defender, if he is armed and not yet acted during the round, can immediately make an attack against the aggressor before the wrestling attempt is resolved. Wrestling is resolved with a contested roll. Both parties roll a d20 and apply both their melee attack bonus and strength modifier. Ties are decided by dexterity, or a die roll if both are still tied. The winner decides whether the loser is immobilized, if he will attempt to disarm the loser, or if he releases the loser. An immobilized opponent can usually take no action other than attempting to escape on his next action, but can instead attack a grappling opponent with natural or minor weapons. Resolve this with another wrestling roll. Any character immobilized for 3 successive wrestling contests is considered pinned and helpless. No further attempts to escape can be made. That's awesome. I like that they limit it, because I feel like sometimes when people are grappled, or immobilized, they could just keep rolling until they get free. And I feel like there's a certain point in physical martial arts, wrestling, grappling, where you're just pinned, dude. You're done. You're exhausted. You've failed to escape. You're just done for. So I like that. 3. The number shall be 3. If disarmament is attempted, and this includes snatching any held object, not just taking away weapons, the defender must make a save versus paralyzation to keep hold of the object that his attacker is attempting to take. While wrestling, attacks are made against all involved as if they were surprised. If there are multiple opponents attempting to wrestle a single defender, all attackers must make their rolls as normal, but only the best roll is used with a +1 bonus for each additional attacker. Creatures whose physiology or special abilities suggest that they have an advantage when grappling, like tentacles, adhesive, multiple limbs, gain a further +1 bonus to their wrestling roll per hit die. So here's what my brain is thinking right off the bat. What if you wrestled down an opponent, right? Your buff fighter successfully grapples and wrestles down that opponent. Does that mean, once they're pinned, that your friends can go up and stab them if you wanted to? And I think that goes back to this helpless opponents rule on page 60 at the top. Helpless opponents, defined as those sleeping, bound, magically frozen, etc., are automatically hit for max damage by anyone attacking them with a melee weapon. So if I'm wrong, please, those of you who have more experience with this game, please let me know in the comments. But to me, it sounds like if you had a character successfully wrestle and grapple an opponent and pin them, that your allies could just go up and stab that bad guy that's being wrestled, if you wanted to do that. Or they could just go up and rope him up and you can interrogate him and torture him and waterboard him and peel his fingernails off. Something mean like that. All right, so you know what? I'm feeling pretty good about the fighter. And I figured I would because, like I said in the beginning, fighters are pretty basic dudes. And I can't imagine an adventure where there wouldn't be a fighter or multiple fighter types. And in this game, there are a lot of those. So with my guy, 14 dex, 14 strength, could definitely be a solid fighter. So I'll have to think on that. But before I do that, I have to look at the other classes in this game before I make my informed decision. So join me on the next episode when I check out the next classes and explore more about Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Until that time, rock on and don't die.